Hey everyone, I'm Dallas from Two Dimension Podcast, and this is another episode of Palooza. So, first off, you might ask yourself, what's Two Dimension? It's a comic book podcast that we've been doing for over a decade now. We have over 300 episodes, and we discuss everything in the comic book wheelhouse. We discuss things going on in the industry, we discuss behind the scenes stuff, we discuss stories, characters, specific books, the history of comics, the artists, the writers, just whatever kind of catches our fancy that week. And you can find this podcast at bunchofdorks.com. Go to that site, click on the Cyclops, and you'll see our entire catalog, 300 plus episodes. We're also available on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, and just a lot of other places. So I would definitely advise you, if you're a fan of comic books and if you're just curious about anything in the industry or just anything in the history of comics, check us out. Between the four of us, we've got decades upon decades of experience and knowledge, and a lot of that is cloudy knowledge, but it's very fun, I promise you. So on this show, Pullapalooza, what I like to do is take a box out of my comic book collection. I pull out a random issue, have no idea what it's going to be, and just kind of talk about it for 4 or 5 minutes. Just a little history of it, or maybe my personal experience when I picked up the issue when I was younger. So, without further ado, I'm going to go down here, just randomly grab an issue. All right, this is a fun one. Oriental Heroes. This is specific issues number 6. Now, it's been decades since I've read them, so I might not know the specifics of this issue, but Oriental Heroes is produced by Jade Comics, which is a pretty big publishing company, or at least it was in the 80s and 90s, in Thailand. And it was founded by Tony Wong. And basically, he created a number of titles, number of characters, and they would release new issues, I believe, every week. And so it took a while to catch on, but it finally came over to America, and there was a huge media blitz, at least in the comic book industry, in the know, right? And Jade Comics was the next big thing coming over from the East. And Tony Wong was pretty well off, and he really marketed himself as a larger than life character along with these comic books. So you really got to know the guy. And the first issue of Jade Comics was a sampler that came out in 1989 in America. And it had a few pages of each of the main 4 titles that were released here in America, Oriental Heroes being one of them. And so it also showcased Tony Wong himself, the founder, and talked about him, and really you got to know him, right? And so it was kind of interesting, at least from my vantage point, because here I am 8, 9 years old, incredibly impressionable. I really enjoyed things coming from the East, China, Japan, Thailand. I know those are completely different cultures, but anything at that age, at 8 years old, it's kind of lumped up in your head, right? And so I picked these up. Now, these are absolutely just action-packed. Funny, there was actually quite a bit of exposition, and I didn't remember that. But the majority of the books were very detailed, really well choreographed fight scenes, which was pretty dang cool. And it was played out as a drama, a lot of characters coming in and out of the story, right? It was almost like a soap opera, because these were released weekly over in Thailand. And the characters were larger than life, just like Tony Wong himself. From what I understand, at least in the beginning, Mr. Wong did all the basic breakdowns of all the main characters, and he drew and choreographed a lot of the scenes and the stories, and then he had ghost artists come behind him and fill in the gaps and draw it out, paint it. I don't know if it was digitally painted at the time. This is the late 80s. Really cool stuff, though. I mean, the art was, even now, pretty top-notch. Now, you can't really get a good idea of the detail right here on my screen, but really good, really cool, fun stuff. And like I said, the main draw and the main appeal, I think, was for an audience that was into kung fu films. There were a lot of big films at the time, and kung fu, karate, martial arts were huge at the time, right? Late 80s, The Karate Kid, the Ninja Turtles for kids such as myself, American Ninja was a film series at the time too. And so they were really capitalizing on that, the martial arts aspect. They were really fun books. And I'll never forget that I started reading him around with the sampler. Then I picked up issue number 2. I missed the first issue, right? And so during the lifespan of Jade Comics here in America, which lasted a number of years, 5-6 years, I would say, I got almost every single issue monthly from my local comic book shop. And at a certain time, I remember saying, this is enough. I'm going to cancel this so I can afford some other books, right? And so I stopped at, I think it was issue number 54. Come to find out, the final issue of Oriental Heroes was 55, and I was never able to nab that final issue. My local comic shop had exclusively been getting Oriental Heroes for me for a few years, and no one else was reading it. And he wasn't able to get that final issue after I canceled my subscription. And in the ensuing years, like maybe just a couple of years ago, I was at a local convention and I picked up that final issue. Haven't read it yet, since the story's not very fresh in my mind yet. But it was a really good, really fun, of its time comic book. Like I said, a lot of soap opera, a lot of kind of campy stuff, but a lot of fun martial arts. So I think that's about it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, check out our podcast, Two Dimension Podcast, at bunchofdorks.com. Go to the site, click on the Cyclops. There's tons of links to all of my side projects, all of the side projects of the other guys that do the show. A lot of fun stuff. So I would advise just checking it out. Just take 2 minutes. Thank you so much for supporting us, guys. And if you enjoyed this, please click like. And it's a huge help to me and the rest of the podcast. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.